Hello, welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, this is the first show that we're done in 2018. And as you can tell, something is different from the last broadcast in that I am wearing headphones. Now, the reason I am doing this is because I was using a microphone before, and it was good, but I just felt like it was picking up background noise. And it sounded a little tinny, if you know what that means. So I wanted to try to make the sound quality a little better, and I've been playing around with it, and I think it works. So we'll see. But this week in politics, we had two things that the most of the pundits are talking about, and then I found one that nobody's talking about, but has huge implications down the road. Now, the first one I want to talk about is the DACA agreement, for the dreamers, which I never really got that. You mean Americans don't have dreams? It's just the illegal aliens that have dreams? Anyway, I digress. It was done by executive, just to give you a little bit of history. That original agreement was done unilaterally by Obama by executive order. And what happened as a result of that executive order, we had 800,000 illegal aliens at the time, children, come in with their parents, and they started just like most aliens, illegals that come to this country, they get on the dole. The Section 8 housing, food stamps, welfare, free business loans. I mean, all the benefits. And for every one of those that are on there, there's an American that is not getting those benefits. And I believe that's wrong. But so anyway, Trump came in and he promised to get rid of them. So when it came time, he put the ball back on Congress. He says, I'm going to give you 6 months to fix this, or I'm going to fix it. Well, that 6 months is up, I believe, in March of 2018. And the Republicans and Democrats are so far apart right now that it doesn't look like what's going to happen, and Trump's going to have to do it. But one of the things that concerns me, I don't think there should be a deal, period. It was done by executive order. You can end it by executive order and ship them all out of here, because they have to, under that original thing, they have to redo their papers every 2 years. So just eliminate that agreement, and the ones that are signed up for them, go get them and ship them out of the country. That's the way it should be done. Which, by the way, they're not kids anymore. The average age for these DACA dreamers is 26 years old. They're adults. But if you're going to do an agreement, there are some things that I believe have to be a critical part. And I want to cover those just so we can see the extent and the amount of damage that is being done, has been done, will continue to be done unless we handle this in a holistic way. As an example, it does no good at all for us to ship out 800,000 illegal aliens if we don't have a wall and they cross back over in the next year. We gained nothing. Or if it does us no good at all to let them stay here if chain migration continues to be allowed. It does us no good to build the wall and kick them out if once they're here, we allow them to get jobs. So there has to be a multi-way to handle this. And so here's the parts that I believe have to be part of any agreement. These, to me, are non-negotiable. Okay, we have to fully finance the wall, and here's why. Once this agreement is done, once if there is an agreement, once it's done, we will have no negotiating leverage with the Democrats at all. If they get the Dreamers able to stay here with full, whether they get full citizenship or legal status, whatever it is they get, we have no leverage at all. Now, why do I mean leverage? The Democrats want these Dreamers to stay. Why? Because they tend to vote Democratic. 800,000 votes for a Democrat can mean the difference between victory and loss. So they want them to stay. And they want chain migration to stay because they'll all vote Democrats. So if we allow, if they reach an agreement where these 800,000 are allowed to stay in exchange for these things, then it's a good agreement. If all of these things are not included in that agreement, then I believe for everyone they allow to stay on the books makes that agreement a worse and worse agreement. So we need to fully finance the wall. I believe that. So a lot of people would say, well, if they can only build a certain amount of it in a year, why not just finance it year to year? And the reason for that is this year we have leverage with the Democrats. Next year, they have no incentive at all to finance that wall. They don't want the wall. Why would they finance it? The only reason they're going to agree to finance it is if they have something in the pot. And right now it's the DACA people. The second thing that needs to be in any agreement concerning the DACA is the lottery immigration needs to be done away with. This is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard of. And here's what the lottery immigration is. Every year, there are, I believe the number is 100,000 lottery immigration visas given out. And here's how they determine it. They look around the world and they decide what countries were underrepresented that year in immigration to the United States. Now, let's just say it's Uzbekistan as an example. Then they would give X amount of visas to Uzbekistan, and all you had to do was send in an application and you got your visa. So every year and Ted Kennedy is the one that did this, by the way. So every year since the 1960s, we've had 100,000 people coming in here from countries we know nothing about by people that aren't vetted in chain migration. And we're wondering why our country is the shape it's in. We need to get rid of the lottery immigration. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We are the greatest country in the world. And if they could, everybody on this planet would come to the United States. So if we have what everybody else wants, let's take only the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And who cares if they all come from the Middle East or the Far East or Europe or South America? Who cares where they come from as long as they're the best of the best? That's what we should be doing. And by the way, that is how we won the Second World War. We took the best of the best from the most technically advanced country at that time at the end of World War I. That's how we got the scientists to build the atomic bomb. We took the best of the best. And that's what we need to get back to and get rid of this stupid lottery immigration. Another thing that needs to be part of the DACA agreement is something called E-Verify, which means every time anybody applies for a job, they need to electronically, digitally verify that they are a legal citizen in this country. And if they're not, ICE needs to be called and they need to be deported. We need to make it impossible. The goal for this is we need to make it impossible for illegal aliens in this country to work in this country. I mean, it does no good for us to have all of these policies if once they get here, they can legally work. And right now, that's exactly what they're doing. And I've referred to this a couple of times. The next thing that needs to be part of any DACA agreement is the end of chain migration. Now, here's what that means, chain migration. Let's say Mohammed from Uzbekistan gets a lottery visa to come to this country. Okay, that's under the lottery. Now, once he's here, now he can use chain migration, which means anybody that is remotely related to him automatically gets a visa. Brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, parents, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, aunts by marriage. I mean, any, that's what the chain is. All the way down the family chain. So that one original lottery immigration soon turns out to be 500 that had no vetting, that offer nothing to us. And as a rule, when they get to this country, go on the dole and now become a burden to our society. That's got to be done. That's got to be eliminated. Chain migration has got to go away. Another thing that needs to happen is the green cards, which gives the legals in this country the opportunity to work. That needs to, those green cards need to be cut in half. As an example, if we currently have 1 million green cards issued a year, we need to drop that to 500,000 because it'll do a couple of things. First off, it will discourage people coming in. And secondly, if they do come in, it will raise the wages for the ones that are here. So that needs to be cut in half. Now, the next one is right out of the headline news. The next thing that, in my opinion, needs to be part of any DACA agreement is we need to defund sanctuary cities and now sanctuary states. A sanctuary city or state is a city or state that allows illegal aliens to seek the city or state's protection from deportation or capture by the federal government in an effort to not be deported. The law of the federal government is if you are illegal, you are caught and sent back. Sanctuary cities say, if we catch you, we will not turn you over to the federal authorities. We will not deport you. We will turn you back out onto the street. Now, as a general rule, I am all for states' rights and I am all for less power for the federal government. However, in the instance of national security, to have less say so, and the federal government needs to have the say so. Illegal aliens coming into this country is not a California issue. It is not an Illinois issue, which, by the way, both states are now sanctuary states. It is a United States problem because they are on the dole from the federal government, and that's minding your taxes. That's everybody in the country is affected by these illegal aliens. So the state should not have the right to make those kinds of decisions. So Donald Trump and his administration has said, if you do not comply with federal government, with the federal regulations concerning illegal aliens, we will stop funding your police force, which, by the way, police forces do receive a lot of federal money. That's not just an empty threat. That's a huge thing. And there are a lot of city mayors and states taking the federal government to court, which is what Democrats always do, tie it up in court to try to get it overturned. I believe, and I believe Jeff Sessions is doing this, he is stopping financing for these sanctuary cities and states. Why should they receive money from the federal government if they're not going to do what the federal government asked them to do, which is law, by the way? That makes no sense at all to me. Um, so they need to defund the sanctuary cities. And frankly, I wouldn't stop at the police force. I would say all federal monies, you know, for infrastructure. Why should I pay for the roads in California with taxpayer money so that illegal aliens can travel better than we do in Illinois? And trust me, in Illinois, our roads are really bad. So, but we're going to send federal money out there to fix their roads or to fix their water system so they can water their fields better so the illegals can have a job. I think they need to stop all federal funding to any sanctuary city or state, period. But we can start with the cities. And I don't think they need to wait for the court case. Just stop writing the checks. Put it into an account somewhere. And if it makes it to the Supreme Court and you lose, then you give them the money. But I would not give them the money. I would make them suffer because they're trying to drag this out as long as they can to drag it through the court system and still receive the money. My logic to that is, okay, you can drag this out as long as you can, but you're not getting another damn dime from me until this is settled. That sounds perfectly logical to me. Why would you continue to pay somebody that is suing you? That makes no sense at all. Stop funding the cities. Now, let's talk about the legal immigration part. Those are the things that I think that need to be part of the DACA agreement. And this part should be a part of it, but this can also be done separately. Okay. I believe the legal immigration criteria that Donald Trump set forward when he addressed this needs to be made legislatively. And here's what I mean by that. It is in the Constitution that the executive has the authority to change immigration policy as he sees fit as it relates to national security. However, what we could do legislatively is to make it mandatory that any immigration, any legal immigration from anywhere concerning any country and any person has to meet the following criteria: that they do not receive any benefits from the federal government, that they are able to take care of themselves, that they have a skill which our country needs, and that they do not bring anybody with them except their immediate family. There's nothing wrong with that criteria. That's logical criteria. And I think that needs to be done legislatively. Now, the president still has the authority to change immigration law and status as he sees fit. But for the ones that are allowed to come in, we can do it legislatively so that we don't run into the situation we did under Obama where anybody can come in, you know, through the lottery or through the chain migration or through illegal immigration. We need to make it so that is not possible and that is not changeable without changing the legislation. Now, here's something that I don't understand. The 6 months that Donald Trump gave the Congress to come up with their plan is in March. I do not understand why Bitch McConnell wants to get a vote on the floor by January 31st. Why the rush? He's the Republican Senate leader. He waited until 3 days before the end of the session to get Trump's tax package through? Why does he want to get the DACA agreement done 3 months ahead of schedule? I don't understand the reasoning for that. If he thinks it's because it's going to build momentum, it may, but as we have covered so far, there are 6 or 7 components, working parts in this agreement that have to be done, in my opinion, to get a workable, acceptable agreement done with the Democrats over DACA. And I don't see that happening in the next 30 days. If these things are done, illegal and legal immigration will be changed forever in this country. But the Democrats are going to roll over and play dead like that. They will stand in the way, and it'll come right down to just like it did with the budget. It'll have to go down budget party lines. And here's the thing. They are going to say that they need 60 votes to get anything passed. And that is true, but that rule is not constitutional. That is a procedural thing that the Senate imposed on itself years ago. When the Democrats were in order, they passed that so that the Democrats could control every piece of legislation that went out and weaken the Republicans' thing. It needs to go back to the way it was, a simple majority on all legislation, not just fiscal. If every piece of legislation goes through and you get 51 votes, it passes. Unfortunately, the only time that is done now is fiscally, and that only by an act of the Senate. And then they have to do each individual piece of legislation to vote on it. I think that needs to be overturned in the Senate, so that if the American people have voted in 52 Republicans, then obviously the majority of the Americans want the Republican agenda done. It should not be allowed that we have a 52, 55, or 59 vote advantage over them and still not be able to put our agenda through. That is against the American people and for the Democratic politicians. However, Mitch McConnell is not going to do that. He's already said he's not going to do that. I think he's wrong, and I think that will eventually lead to his ouster if he does not change that. But I still don't understand the reason, the rush to get this done by January 31st. Mitch McConnell is no friend of Donald Trump, and whenever he does something like this, there is a game afoot, and I'm not sure what it is yet. Time will tell on that one. So that's pretty much how I see the DACA. Now, the next issue I want to talk about is a Utah Senator, Orrin Hatch, is retiring. And everybody immediately asked the question, is Mitt Romney coming back as senator? I hope not. He is a rhino. He is a liberal. When he ran for president, he didn't get any of the very many conservative votes because he was the architect of what was called Medicare, and that was the basis that Obama did Obamacare on. That's how liberal Mitt Romney is. So Orrin Hatch is a very conservative Republican, and Orrin Hatch has always been a conservative. So to lose one conservative and to add a liberal would be disastrous. That would be like adding another McCain to the Republican list in the Senate, which is going to take our lead down to nothing because he will always vote against Trump. Mitt Romney is a part of the swamp. He's a liberal. He is a Republican in name only. He absolutely hates Trump. I don't know if you remember or not, but during the presidential election, after Trump, no, it was before Trump wrapped up the nomination. and it looked like he was going to win. Mitt Romney came out as a Republican, attacking another Republican, Donald Trump, and spending millions of Republican dollars on a campaign to beat Trump and make him lose the election. These rhinos would rather have had Clinton in office than Donald Trump. And the Republican National Committee spent the money, not Mitt Romney. The RNC spent the money to get Trump out. So Mitt Romney will do nothing. He will be worse than McCain if he is back in there. So you people that are in Utah, do not vote for Mitt Romney, please. I remember that attack, and it was an onslaught for a good month, and the press gave it a lot of free airtime because Mitt Romney was expressing the same sentiment that the never Trumpers, that the pro-Clintons, that the establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats and everybody else was echoing down the way. That Trump, they said the stock market would tank, unemployment would rise, the economy would go in the toilet, and nothing has been wrong. I just, last week, I did a program on all of the accomplishments of the Trump administration in 1 year, and boy, if you didn't listen to that, you should go back and listen. That it will absolutely blow your mind the amount he got done in 1 year, and that's with a Senate that was like herding cats. And he managed to do that. Can you imagine what would happen if we had a unified party? It blows the mind. But anyway, the second topic was Senator Orrin Hatch retires. And the question is Mitt Romney coming back? Now, the press is talking, they're not really discussing it and talking about it. They've mentioned it. And I believe the mainstream media wants to leave that in the back and not draw any attention to it. Because if it draws attention, the conservatives will all go in there and try to beat Mitt Romney, and they should. I guarantee you that if Mitt Romney runs, the RNC will back him to the hilt. Even if and here'll be the test. If we could get a Tea Party Republican with a good reputation, to run against Mitt Romney in the primary, 2 Republicans, there is no doubt in my mind that the RNC would put all of their money and then some behind Mitt Romney and would absolutely freeze out the Tea Party candidate. That's how bad this is. That is how bad the potential is for this to happen. If Mitt Romney takes that seat, Donald Trump may as well just hang up any more legislative victories because it just won't happen. So this is really a crucial issue. I believe this is going to become front and center further down the road, the closer to the election that we get. We'll be able to see signs along the way, and I'm going to try to keep updated on because Mitt Romney will start making speeches that'll be public. He'll start trying to round up money. He'll start getting little blurbs in newspapers and stuff. But I do believe that the mainstream media will try to keep this on the down low so that the conservatives don't get their hackles up until it's too late. And then they're going to go full bore pushing Romney in that Utah race. The only way we have a chance of defeating that is to get in there on the ground floor and let's start putting some money in there. Now, the last issue I want to discuss is one that nobody else has really picked up on. I did a story, I don't remember when, a couple of months ago. And I told a story about Donald Trump had put together an election advisory board. And their goal was they had no power. All they were to do was to gather information and advise the president. And so they sent letters out to every state and asked them for certain information from the board of elections in each state, and they were going to cross-reference um, from around the country to eliminate, and this is a beautiful plan. It would eliminate, to a large degree, uh, voter fraud. And immediately the blue states, California, New York, Illinois, uh, Florida, and a couple of, well, most of them up in the Northeast, Washington, uh, and I think there might have been one red state down south somewhere, but I believe they have a Democratic governor. But they all immediately refused. All the red states turned theirs in. Now, ask yourself why. Because the Democrats use this method, and I hate to say it, but they are cheaters. They want this option left open. Just in the state of Illinois, which is a blue state, in the last presidential election, we had 20 some counties. I think it was 21 counties in this state. I want you to listen to this. 21 counties in this state that had more votes cast than were registered voters in that county. And not just one county, 20 some. I think it was 21. So let's say if you lived in Sangamon County and there was 1,000 registered voters, people that were on the books being able to vote, 1,000. At the end of the night, there might have been 1,500 actual votes counted. You ask yourself, how does that happen? It's illegal voter fraud, and it was in massive degrees. It was massive in California, massive in Illinois, massive in New York, and not quite as bad in the other blue states, but it's massive fraud. That's why when Trump was elected and Clinton came out and said that she won the popular vote, Trump said, no, you didn't. You might have won the votes counted, but those were, most of those were illegal votes out in California. So this is a huge issue. Anyway, that board was disbanded this week because they were getting no cooperation. The blue states were not cooperating, and they were trying to tie them up in court. And since this advisory board had no power, they had nowhere to go. So Trump disbanded them. Now, you might say, well, the Democrats won. No. And here's the beauty of this plan. Trump tried the nice way. You know, he set up a board. He gave them no power. He asked them to go get information and make recommendations. That's all. And the Democrats fought it. Okay. So Trump said, okay, I tried it the nice way and you don't want to play nice. So here's what's going to happen. Now I'm going to take this assignment and I'm going to give it to DHS, the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security. And you say, well, what business is it in Homeland Security? Well, if you have 11 million illegal people in this country, that's all the way up to 11 million illegal votes being cast, not to mention other types of voter fraud. We already know for a fact that there's massive fraud. The state of Virginia, just in their state, did this cross-checking, okay? And in their state alone, they found 100,000 votes that were cast illegally that they could prove. 100,000. Multiply that times 50. You can't do the math. That's 5 million votes. And that's just states in the size of Virginia. What about New York or California? That number could be as high as 11 to 12 million votes per election. And the majority of them vote Democratic. So you can see why the Democrats are hooting and hollering and don't want this to stop. They want the illegal votes to continue. But now Donald Trump has moved that over to Department of Homeland Security. What does that mean? That means now that they have power. They have the power of Homeland Security behind them. And it goes to Homeland Security because if you have 10 or 11 million votes at your beck and call, you can and will determine eventually who leads this government. And that is a definite harm to Homeland Security. They moved it over there. Now they have power. Now they have all types of authority to do whatever needs to be done to get this done. The only problem I see is Department of Homeland Security is part of the swamp. So I see it going very, very slowly. And I don't see any changes being made in the first term. I believe by the second term, it could be done. But Trump is going to have to stay on them, motivate them, and make this happen. If they chose to, Homeland Security could have this done in a year. The second reason it was moved to Department of Homeland Security, and this is beautiful. This is beautiful. The Democrats have been saying all along that Russia influenced our last presidential election. If Russia is, and this is using the Democrats' narrative, if the Russians influenced our election, that affects our Homeland Security. That means the Russians are having influence. Therefore, the justification is to the Democrats. This is what Trump is saying to the Democrats. Okay, if you think the Russians are influencing our elections, that is a threat to our Homeland Security because that means the Russians are influencing our presidential elections. Therefore, the action to put it under Homeland Security should be something that you want. If you truly want this fixed, here's how we're going to fix it. We'll turn Homeland Security loose on it and have them fix it. It takes the argument right out of the hands of the Democrats. Now they have no argument to go against this. Beautiful. Very well played by Donald Trump. Again, because it's in Homeland Security, the blue states will not be able to tie this up in court because it will be a matter of national security. They will not be able to stall Homeland Security because it's national security. Nothing trumps national security, so no pun intended. With other departments, you can get around, install in court and paperwork and all of that. Homeland Security, nothing trumps national security. Beautiful move by Trump. So the message here for the Democrats is be careful what you ask for because you now got what you asked for. Trump is using your own logic and your own lies against you to get what he wants. It's a beautiful move. And I think it's awesome. Well, those are the three topics I wanted to talk about. The DACA agreement, Senator Hatch retires, has Mitt Romney coming back, and the election board disband. Amen. Now they're going to have some teeth going after these guys, and I think it's beautiful. Now, at the end of these programs, I always like to do current events. That's just taking a couple of stories out of the headlines for the week. And I do it for a reference point for the future, so that when people go back to try to write history or tell stories, they don't get their storylines confused and misstated. Like if you wanted to know what was going on in the United States the first week in January when the DACA agreement came up for discussion, what else was going on? Well, I got two of them. The first one, and the big one that's been happening this week, is a cold spell. The entire country is just freezing. It's an Arctic freezing coming down from Canada all the way. Tennessee is getting near 0-degree weather. They're having snow in Florida and Texas. The freezing cold is affecting everything. and it's been going on for about a week or a week and a half. They are forecasting that in the next couple of days it will finally break, but it is set to go back down to freezing soon. So the big freeze for 2018 starts the first week of January, and oh, buddy, it's cold. Also, part of that is there's mega snowstorms out on the East Coast because of the freezing weather and because they're near the water. The water effect is just New York is being buried in snow, as is Massachusetts. So it's a massive. It hasn't been declared a national emergency as far as I know, but in some areas I'm sure that it is. The other current event I wanted to talk about is Steve Bannon, who I absolutely love, a part of Breitbart, and Donald Trump are in a fight. And it started this week. And there was a writer that used Steve Bannon to write a book, and he's a Democrat, but Steve Bannon supposedly contributed to this book. And one of the major things that he said that got Trump drawn into the fight was he called the actions of Trump Jr. treasonous for meeting that attorney in Trump Tower during the transition. Totally silly. I can't believe Steve Bannon said that. I believe that was probably taken either out of context or even made up by this author. This book has just now been released, and it has already been discredited. The writer is a Democratic hack. He misquotes, he lies, he tells people it's off the record and then puts it on the record. He's just a political hack trying to add fuel to the fire to get Trump ousted by keeping the narrative in the mainstream media about Russian collusion. Trump has threatened a libel lawsuit against the author of the book and Steve Bannon, and I think that's accurate. I think that's exactly what should happen. They were talking about issuing a cease and desist order to the publisher. I think that's also accurate. But these two are the two issues from current events that I wanted to list this week that have started. I don't think we've heard the last of the Bannon Trump fight. They used to be friends. Bannon was part of Trump's inner circle through the election and into the White House, and resigned several months ago, and now this. So either somebody was duped, somebody's lying, but no matter what the issue, Trump is being vilified once again for something that is not his issue. And I believe time will tell that Bannon was either tricked or lied about or lied to. Bannon would not say that on his own about a meeting being treasonous. That's just hyperbole done by this author to keep the narrative alive. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about this week. I do want to say that this program and all the other programs that we do are produced and sponsored by the Prayer Box Ministry. You can find us online at prayerboxministry.org. That's org.org. Go over there and check us out. You can find all of our programs being are over there being streamed, audio and video. You can join a prayer club that we have. We have over 1,000 people that pray every day for prayer requests for people all over the country. Go over there, you can join that, or you can have, there's a page on there where you can have somebody read you any chapter you want out of the Bible, not the book, just a chapter. So you can get God's word in some chapters as little as 2 minutes. Just go over there, click on the chapter you want, and somebody will read it to you. So go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. That's org.org. Well, that's the show for this week. I look forward to next week when we talk about this week in politics.